Hello, and a very good morning to all our participants from the UK, and a good afternoon to our participants in India. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Prashanjit. I lead on the energy and advanced engineering sectors for the UK-India Business Council. Our webinar today is to explore opportunities in technology collaboration in advanced engineering and the manufacturing sectors in India. As you are all aware, India is looking at increasing the share of engineering and manufacturing in its GDP to 25% from the current 16% over the next 8 to 10 years, which, given the size of the economy, is a huge jump. And I think a key factor for achieving this ambition is access to technology. The UK has obviously a multiplicity of strengths in these sectors and is very well placed to engage with India, especially when we look at the Indian government's Make in India initiative. But before we begin, I would like to familiarize you with the toolbox on the right-hand side of your screens. Just to let you know, we will have everyone on mute during the course of the webinar to keep any background noise to a minimum. But if you have a question, please drop it into the little bracket on the toolbox to your right in the please type your question here section to send me your question, and I will take it up during our Q&A session at the end. But now, to make sure you can all hear me clearly, could I please ask you all to use the raise your hand button on the toolbar? Could you please click the raise your hand button? Okay, thank you. I would now like to welcome our speaker today, Mr. Shaarad Sharma, from the Newton. He's a manager at the Newton Fund program at the Royal Academy of Engineering. The Newton Fund is a UK government Department of Business funded program to create science, innovation and R&D linkages between 15 emerging power countries. And obviously India is one of them. As a part of his role, Shaarad oversees the design and delivery of the Academy's array of activities under this fund. He's also involved in the negotiation and coordination of government agencies and innovation stakeholders in the partner countries to jointly develop and implement these avenues of innovation, cooperation, and to monitor, evaluate, and report on their impacts. Without taking up any more time, let me hand you over to Shaarad.
Okay, thank you, Prasanjit, for the introduction and also the opportunity to speak. Hi, everybody. My name is Shaarad Sharma. I work with the Royal Academy of Engineering. Just give a bit of a very brief background about the Academy, because it's a bit of an odd organization. We're a fellowship organization comprised of 1,500 of the leading engineers within their field, the people who are really pushing the boundaries of technology, both within industry and also within academia. We, as an organization, we try to leverage their expertise to sort of promote engineering within the UK and improving both enhancing the excellence of the field, but also promoting engineering throughout the economy and the society, and hoping to sort of broaden its impact. We do that through a number of mechanisms. We give policy advice to governments, we implement campaigns, we work with schools and universities to look at how they teach, how they engage young students, and try to improve the throughput of engineers within the system. But mostly for the purposes of this presentation, I'll be mainly talking about our role as a funder. So the Academy in the UK and internationally actually encourages collaborations and also research in specific sectors or specific areas to enhance both excellence within the field, but also mainly to encourage industry-academia collaboration. So we have schemes in the UK which look to bridge the both sectors to help make research that bit more productive and have more economic impact, but also to have industry say in setting research agenda and making sure it's systemically the universities sort of consider what society and industry needs. That obviously has international applications too, and we work in collaboration with governments abroad and other academies of engineering to do the same, basically. Next slide, please. So I'll be going on to talk about the Newton Fund, as Prasenjit had mentioned. What I wanted to say a little bit before doing that, though, is actually to try and contextualize it and try to give a sense of the impetus behind the Newton Fund. And so it really came about during the recession, and with the recession in the UK was the need seen to sort of make the economy a bit more broad-based than just the financial services. When that happened, when that realization came to pass, and also we saw that the government realized also that they've got this great research base. We've got a number of facts on the screen there. 4 out of top 10 universities, 4.1% of researchers globally, 6.4% of journal articles, 15.9% of most cited articles. So there was this a recognition that the science being produced and the science and research being produced within the UK was really top-notch, internationally competitive, if not leading. However, we weren't so developed in our thinking about how to make that make the excellent research into our economic benefit, and to try and improve value addition and enhance our productivity as a nation. So within the recession, basically, there was the government had implemented a number of policies, including the industrial strategy, to help do just that, and specifically to give pushes in I think there's about 8 to 10 specific sectors which they had identified as being key growth areas within the next 10 to 20 years. And so they tried to encourage, especially industry-academia collaboration within that. Obviously, internationally, you might have seen the GREAT campaign. So we've got some pictures on the left-hand side there. Innovation is great, technology is great, knowledge is great. And that's really trying to, again, a push on the UK government's behalf to appeal internationally, and India is a very, very key market for us, to make the UK a partner in choice in knowledge generation and technology development. So I think that's it for this slide. Next slide, please. So with this growing realization came another dynamic, actually, whereby the economy started growing again, and many of you might be aware that the government has committed itself to spend 0.7% of GDP on overseas development assistance. And in order to, there was a big push on the government's behalf because the economy had increased quite rapidly, and so that amount had actually increased. And trying to sort of leverage the science and innovation base within the UK to go out with the resources that gave, to go out and help collaborate with developing countries on issues of global challenges. So things like, especially with India, urbanization, population, antimicrobial resistance, and water are big issues. And so the UK government made available some pot of money towards trying to engage and leverage UK science towards trying to tackle those problems, both through research, but increasingly actually through innovation and technology development, getting high-tech products and services to market. Next slide, please. So that's the overall context, and the exact mechanism of doing that was the Newton Fund. So it was in 2014 that the government, through Department of Business, Innovation and Skills, came up with this concept, and it's a fund. It's 350 million per year over 5 years, and that's just the UK contribution. Partner governments also contribute and match funds, so it's actually a lot more than just the 350 million. And this is going towards building science and innovation partnerships with 15 emerging power countries. I've listed them there to promote economic development and welfare within them. So the mechanism that Newton Fund works is actually there's a series of actual bilateral cooperations or bilateral agreements between the UK and each of those countries, including India, of course, which takes up quite a large chunk of that money, in fact. The Newton Fund, it's split over 3 strands, so 3 themes. Firstly, people. So that's really looking about capacity building within the sort of research communities in the partner countries. There's programs as well, which is looking at developing knowledge and collaborating within the research itself. And then there's the translation strand, which I'll speak a little bit more about. And we call that innovation. It's bringing the research to market, and getting these getting the research, packaging them into products and services, which can then go out and reach the masses and help do what we're trying to do, which is trying to leverage science and innovation to improve development outcomes. So the overall fund is 350 million. Those are the 3 strands, but they're actually split between 15 different delivery partners in the UK. Of course, we're one of them. There's the Research Councils UK, which is, in fact, a conglomerate of 7 different research councils. British Council, Innovate UK, you might know, Royal Society, British Academy, Academy of Medical Science, and the Met Office. We all play slightly different roles. We obviously are in different fields themselves. So we look to develop programs which will help which will give funding for collaborations within our specific field. So for us, it's engineering, whereas with the Royal Society, it would be sort of more fundamental science. Next slide, please. So going on to the bilateral initiative with India, this is called the Newton Bhabha Fund. And it was signed between, in 2014 again, between our Department of Business, Innovation and Skills and the Department of Science and Technology in India. So this is £50 million is the budget for the India collaboration. On the UK side, the Indian government has also put in a pot of money too. So you're probably looking at, I didn't have the exact figures, but around £70 million, I'd imagine, would be the total amount being put in. And there are sector priorities, so sustainable cities, rapid urbanization, public health and well-being, energy, water, food nexus, and the 2 sort of underpinning sectors with amongst all those 3 is high-value manufacturing and big data. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the opportunities for businesses to gain access to this funding, and that happens through our programs at the Academy, but also programs that Innovate UK and DRC, Research Councils UK, have. Next slide, please. So one of the programs that we run at the Academy, it's called the Higher Education Partnerships Program. And this basically looks to build industry-academia linkages between India and the UK, so bilaterally. Basically, it's got you've got a list there, a bullet point list of what we're hoping to do by supporting this, and promote knowledge sharing between HEIs and industry, improve employability of graduates through having industry have a better say in curricula, engineering curricula in Indian universities, and how the pedagogy of how they teach, and also trying to suggest sort of student projects and things so people actually get that practice orientation within their undergraduate education. Obviously looking to improve innovation capacity, build entrepreneurial skills, and generally enhance linkages. I think one of the things that we've found, and one of the things that has been said in India many a time, is that industry and academia, there is actually very little collaboration between the two sectors. And given the population growth, given the skills gap that is coming up, and also, I mean, on the research side, and after graduation, companies are having to reskill graduates that have come out of universities in quite elaborate campuses sometimes, and have research centers in-house rather than use universities as a tool for doing that. So this is an initiative to try and remedy that malady, basically. And so basically we ask Indian universities to be the lead partner, but they must partner with an industry organization and also a UK organization, which can be either from academia or industry. And they'll apply for £50,000 worth of funding and that will go towards salary support and travel and subsistence costs and workshop costs and those sorts of things, towards just trying to get the sectors to talk together. So it's a relatively small amount of money, but we have seen quite a lot of success. So next slide, please. So these are the types of projects that have been proposed so far, and you'll see some quite high quality companies there. Siemens India, you obviously also see leading UK universities there, and we've also tried to engage more tier 2 and tier 3 universities, especially in India, because on the premise that those universities are actually where the next crop of practicing engineers are going to come from, because if you focus on the tier 1s, then most of them go off into sort of finance or business management sectors. So we've got quite a few interesting collaborations. One trying to curate a sort of biotechnology innovation ecosystem within Western Bengal, and others in the advanced manufacturing sectors. There's one trying to promote the Research and Training Center for developing low-cost medical diagnostic devices. So even though it might be less money, small amounts of money, we're hoping that the impact will be quite big. For this initiative, we're working with Federation Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, which helps connect us a lot more so to a wider range of universities and also Indian industry partners. And I think one of the premises of this sort of collaboration is really just to try and build the bilateral partnerships, because normally we'd see universities to university collaboration between India and the UK, or business to business, but very little in terms of the innovation partnerships between businesses and universities. So next slide, please. Another program that we run is called the Leaders in Innovation Fellowship Program, and we're running this in cooperation with the Department of Science and Technology in India, and they've got a Power of Ideas program, which is a big nationwide competition for startups. I think it generated 7,000 applications from India, from Indian startups, and that's since been whittled down to about 70. So you're talking about, the creme de la creme of Indian startup talent that's coming through the program. So we partner with them. From that 70, we actually select 15 to come over here to the UK, give them additional sort of training and skills in research commercialization and technology entrepreneurship. But I mean, the main premise is that we hope to really network the people that we do get out of this program with UK-based actors. So obviously one of the premises of the program is that the products and services that the startups are proposing have to be for some sort of have to have some sort of social and economic development impact too. So it can't be just purely commercial. So things like renewable energy, startups in the health sector, for instance, are very well attuned to it. So far, we've been running it for 2 years, and we've got 45 of the leading innovators and startups in India within the Academies network. And that will be growing year on year, so we'll have 15 more coming each year, basically. So I think one of the reasons I brought this up to yourselves is that we're hoping that through this network, we both network them with UK companies and potential investors too, but also for UK-based startups who are looking to maybe tap the Indian market or looking to collaborate on technology development too. This would be a really useful network for yourselves to use. And we'd welcome you to come to us and ask if there are any opportunities or any potential collaborators, and we can see if we can match you from amongst them. I've given some examples in the next slide, please. So these are the examples of the companies that came through last year. So Excel Matrix works in regenerative medicine. It's one of the very few firms in India, I think, that does that, and we're obviously trying to curate and promote that expertise within the UK too. Know Your Genome does genetic testing to try and help individuals identify mutations that will lead to eventually to diseases. And so the earlier that can be done, the more the higher ability there is that you're able to take avertive action. Logistics informatics was quite a big sector. So Grey Roots Technologies, they have an end-to-end service which helps companies track their logistics and deliveries to help enhance efficiency. And we've got many others, other companies in the mHealth sector, assisting healthcare providers and private hospitals, for instance, to remotely monitor patients' health and take proactive response, proactive action towards ensuring that health-seeking behavior. In the construction sector, we had a company that was proposing that had a product of flat pack houses, which were both cheap and safe, and so more of process innovation within the construction sector. Renewable energy, there was a company up in Uttarakhand which had proposed, which had a plant which changed pine needles into charcoal for use in cooking and other energy generation. So these are the types of companies that are there within our remit. And so just to let you know. Next slide, please. And I think one of the things that we're looking to do within the Newton Fund, as I said, we're not the only partners, is to link up, actually. So in realization that our programs are quite small, they're looking to generate partnerships, basically, and do things that are impactful, but within the scale that is available within our funding, because we are one of the smaller delivery partners. We look then to feed into much bigger programs of support for those partnerships. So if you go to the next slide, please. One of those, for instance, would be an Innovate UK call. So Innovate UK is the UK government innovation agency, which looks to promote innovation primarily within businesses, actually. And so they've got currently open collaborative industrial R&D competition. It's got a sectoral focus, so companies within clean tech, affordable healthcare, and ICTs are eligible to apply. And they're giving grants in the order of £350,000 to £450,000 from the UK side, and that will be topped up by a similar size grant on the Indian government side, by the way, to help generate products and services that help tackle different societal problems within those specific sectors. So just to give a little bit of more information, the projects can last up to 2 years. They encourage small and micro enterprise, if you're a small and micro, basically. So the deadline for that is 20th of April of this year. They also have, I think, a tool to help people, to help companies connect with each other. So if you log into their website, a screenshot of it is there. You'll be able to see that tool, and it's kind of a matchmaking kit, basically. So that's one of the things that we're hoping our programs will feed into generating sort of pipeline of partnerships, which will then go on to apply for these types of grants. And so next slide, please. Another grant opportunity I thought I'd highlight was the research and innovation bridges. So these are challenge-based. So in this instance, it's agri-food sector. Unfortunately, the deadline's about to close. I think, that's today, in fact. So this is more to highlight that these sorts of opportunities are available than to sort of give concrete guidance on applying for it. But for this call, for instance, this was for business-to-business industrial research. This was for grants in the order of £800,000 to £1 million to conduct collaborative R&D projects, again up to 2 years, again encouraging SMEs and small micro enterprises in a similar manner to the last. And within the agri-food sector, especially post-harvest, so looking at packaging, processing, and distribution of the foods. So it's worth keeping an eye out. I mean, obviously the order of magnitude of the grants is very high. It's worth keeping an eye out on their websites for these kinds of opportunities. They give quite a lot of lead-in time until the deadline. So from announcement to the deadline, it's about 6 months to help people to help the applicant businesses both connect and then, scope the project and then form the different IP agreements and things like that. So this, I don't have foresight on the next sector focuses of the upcoming calls. But again, something to keep an eye out for. Next slide, please. I thought I'd talk a little bit. So those were the main opportunities for businesses amongst the Newton Fund. There's also a lot of work going on in the capacity building sector. So though I've listed the different institutions there and the different schemes they have in capacity building. So just to let you know, and please do publicize them if you've got, if you know of young Indians within the research sphere who might look to do sort of either PhD programs or postdoc programs here in the UK. And on the research side, so this is more university to university research centres, but there's plenty of activity as well. So there are joint research centres which are very large in scope, in fact, on cancer biology, antimicrobial resistance, renewable energy in the agricultural sector as well, and there's also a joint centre on cities and urbanisation. One thing I'd like to say, though, on the research side is that if businesses get involved in any of those centres, it's seen as positive. What we're really looking for in the Newton Fund is for research not to remain research, but for their practical applications. In different universities in the UK and India, certainly get in touch with them. You can just do a little bit of research if you're within those fields. Get in touch with them, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to have yourselves on board in collaborative activities in some way. The other thing I'd like to say about this slide is what's happening on the Newton Bhabha Fund is, it's actually quite a step change in collaboration in sort of capacity building, research and innovation sphere. So you're getting a lot of, quite a large pool of talent within these sectors, from which can obviously feed into your different companies, or also be utilized for collaborative activities too. And these are people that have been skilled in either Indian researchers who have been skilled here for some time, or focused on a specific challenge and are used to working bilaterally because they have those relationships and those partnerships as well. So I think that's a really valuable thing to point out as well. So next slide, please. So this is just to give an example of the types of research centres that's ongoing. This is from the BBSRC, so Biological and Biosciences Research Council. They're funding on quite a big scale 4 different research centres looking at fertilisers and chemicals for use in agriculture, basically. So they funded for those 4 different research centres in that, and then there's just some text about what they're hoping to achieve, basically. But it's given more as an illustrative example of the kinds of things that Newton is funding in research on a large scale. Next slide, please. So, we're nearing the end of the presentation. What I hope you're getting a picture of is how both the scale of the Newton Bhabha Fund and how easily it helps you link UK businesses and Indian businesses to collaborate and link into these large schemes that the Indian government is doing. So another thing that helps do that, of course, is that for each of those programs that I've just been talking about, we need to have a government partner. So there is an inherent link anyway to Indian government priorities. But in terms of Skill India, we're talking about capacity building on a large scale. Smart cities, there have been several research calls on future cities, and that's something that will I think you'll be seeing a lot more of in future too. Startup India, of course, through our own activities, and then those through Innovate UK. Make in India, Digital India, Clean Ganga project, all these things, all these schemes need underpinning skills and research and innovation for them to be enabled. And I think the Newton Bhabha Fund presents quite a lot of opportunities, and also I've highlighted low risk there because one of the things that we're quite aware of within the Newton Bauer Fund is that people might not necessarily have track records of collaboration. So if you were to in a normal environment for a procurement, for instance, you'd have to show how much experience you've had within a certain country or doing X thing. Within Newton Bauer Fund, we're actually in a position where the fund itself is able to take on quite a lot of the risk in that, and we're very focused on generating new partnerships. So if you are able to propose a solid partnership which has a good team and the capabilities there, and the project is, obviously innovative and helps meet also economic and social development objectives, then we will assess it based on the merit of the project rather than the background as well. So you can also, obviously we had encouraged, Innovate UK encouraged small and micro enterprises as well, and SMEs. So all these things are all with a sense of a view to the future of collaboration. And I think, it's probably fair to say that it has made the UK now a sort of the partner in choice in research and innovation activities. So at least in the eyes of the government and the support mechanisms available. So I think the next slide, please. So that's it from my side. I mean, I think just to say where you can find all these wonderful opportunities, it's relatively easy. newtonfund.ac.uk. There is on the screenshots I've shown the exact place, so /funding/opportunities, and then you can filter through for programs related to India. And obviously, if you follow the fund on Twitter too, then you'll be up to date as well. So I hope that's proved useful. I think the next slide is just a Q&A. So looking forward to answering any queries that yourselves might have.
Many thanks, Shaarad. Thank you for the brilliant and information-laden presentation. I am sure all our participants would have enjoyed the presentation as well. Just in terms of adding to a few things which you have already alluded to in your presentation, as in you talked about the wider remit of the collaboration in terms of what you are looking at, as in not restricting it to either the RAE or activities, or not just looking at the individual organizations like Innovate, but working together as a group. And that, Shaarad, as you and we at UKIBC have worked closely on the UK-India bilateral joint economic and trade committee dialogues, that has been one of the things which many of the participants, both from the Indian industry as well as the UK industry, had mentioned, right? As in terms of collaborating and coming up with projects which are more impactful. And I think that's exactly where we are headed towards.
No, you're exactly right, Prasenjit, and trying to. So the Newton part of the issues, at least in the first couple of years of the Newton Fund, has been it came about with quite suddenly. So it wasn't as if there simply wasn't time for the coordination to happen on that scale. So obviously India is just one of the countries. You've got 15 different countries. You've also got 15 different delivery partners. So it's been an iterative process of how to work together within the Newton Fund, showing a single face to the sort of research and innovation communities, and then also linking that in to sort of ongoing bilateral initiatives like the JETCO. But I think we're getting a lot better at doing that. One of the things that has helped do that also is, just some of the impacts that have come out of the Newton Baba Fund and elsewhere. They demand the attention too. People, whenever ministers go over there, they highlight different programs and ongoing programs of cooperation. So it's a very big deal on the bilateral level, and getting large industrial partners and others that are engaged within the JETCO especially, and just aligning the two initiatives is very important indeed to make sure we're all pulling in the right direction.
Yeah, and just as in, we have actually been receiving quite a few questions as well from our participants. I do not know whether we'll have time to answer everything, but at some point, as in, we'll try to take up a couple now, and then for the rest of it, I think what I'll do is I'll connect you to the person asking the question, and then we can take it offline if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So 2-3 questions which I would like you to quickly answer is one of the questions which has come up is in during your presentation a question is, when you speak about clean tech, does that include renewable energy technologies? I would think yes, but your views?
I'd have to consult the Innovate UK guidelines, but I'd very much imagine so. Yes.
Okay. And then there is there is another question which where when you talked about the 50 million fund, and there's a question in terms of when did it start?
So it started in 2014, but the bulk of expenditure is actually going to happen within the next financial year and the one after. One worth noting as well is, based upon the success of the first couple of years, the Newton Fund is actually the exact figures aren't there yet, but it's about to get extended and upscaled too. So partners shouldn't be worrying about the end, because it's looking like it's going to continue, at least for the sort of short to medium term too.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And in the last question, which I think we'll just barely have time, is there a mechanism for finding Indian academic partners to work with? As in, do you have in place a kind of a pool or a program to look into that, or is it for individuals or businesses to find partners on their own? Because obviously finding a right Indian partner is extremely important for projects to be.
No, absolutely. So that's something we're currently. It's a bit of a mixture of both. I've been doing quite a lot of matchmaking myself, on the academy programs at least. Mm-hmm. I've been doing a lot of matchmaking. However, that's generally tended to be people from India or other partner countries looking for UK partners, basically. So I think the first port of call, at least if it's an academy program, would be, ask myself. My email is right there, and then I'll be able to spread through networks. But we are looking at the fund-wide level at trying to have some sort of matchmaking facility, online matchmaking facility as well. So as I said, Innovate UK have it, and I think the research councils might as well. But that is something that we're working on. In the meanwhile, please feel free to contact me, and I'll do my best to assist in guiding through that process.
Thanks, Shaarad, and I'm sure as in we have been working closely together. So any others which we come across, or any other companies, whether they are Indian or from here, looking at any kind of technology collaborations or anything under this program, I would very happily point them towards you.
Absolutely, please do that.
And so I think our webinar is coming to an end today. Thank you all very much for your time, and I hope this webinar was useful to you. If you have any feedback or comments about today's session, please let me know. And thanks again for joining us.